She maxed out my credit card, cheated, and then texted me that I should help with her rent. I simply said, "You're right," forwarded her message to the investigators, and watched as her own mother found out what fraud really looks like. When people ask how long it took me to get over my ex, I usually say about 3 seconds after her last text. It read, "Since we live together, you should help with my rent this month. It's the right thing to do after everything." After everything. Those 2 words did more damage than all her lies combined. Let me back up a bit. We lived together for 2 years in a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, but ours. I handled most of the bills, not because I made more, but because I was better at managing money. She'd always forget to pay her half on time, and I'd pick up the slack to avoid fights. That was the first red flag, I guess. How easy it was for her to let me fix her mistakes while she called it partnership. Then came the credit card. I added her as an authorized user when her car broke down. "Just for emergencies," I said. She smiled and promised, "Of course, babe. I'd never take advantage." 3 months later, my emergency visa bill arrived. $3,200 at designer boutiques, 2 flights to Miami, a weekend hotel under her name. When I asked, she rolled her eyes. "Don't be controlling. You said you trust me." And like an idiot, I tried to. A few weeks later, I found out she was sleeping with her coworker, a guy she once swore was like a brother. It wasn't even the affair itself that broke me. It was how casual she was about it when I confronted her. "You're overreacting. It just happened. You've been distant lately." She said that like betrayal was some spontaneous weather event, something she just got caught in. So I left. I packed what was mine, canceled the card, and told her she had 2 weeks to handle the rest of the rent. I thought that was the end. Until a month later, that text came in, the one asking me to help with rent. At first, I laughed. Then I realized she was serious. She genuinely thought that because we used to share an apartment, I was still responsible for her rent. Like breaking my heart wasn't enough, she wanted financial support as a consolation prize. I typed "You're right" and hit send. But instead of arguing, I opened my email and attached screenshots of the text to a message addressed to her mother, the co-signer on her lease. I added a short note. "Hi, Mrs. Carter. I'm not sure if you're aware, but your daughter just asked me to help cover her rent again, even after I discovered she used my credit card without permission. Since your name is still on the lease, I thought you should know what's going on before the landlord contacts me about missed payments. Alex." I didn't expect a response that night, but 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I had no idea she did that. "Thank you for letting me know. I'll take care of it." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. At 1:12 a.m., my ex called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Why would you drag my mom into this? What's wrong with you?" And then another, "You're just bitter because I moved on." And finally, "You'll regret this." But I didn't, because when I checked my email the next morning, there was a message from my bank's fraud department. They'd been reviewing my claim about unauthorized charges, and it turned out my ex had used my card info for more than just luxury shopping. There were attempts to open new credit accounts, loans. One of them even listed her mother's name as a co-applicant. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just personal betrayal, it was financial fraud. And all I did was forward one text. The email from the bank didn't feel real at first. I read it 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table, coffee growing cold beside my laptop. "We've detected additional accounts open using your personal information. We'll need your cooperation to proceed with the investigation." Additional accounts. Not just unauthorized purchases, accounts. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. My ex, for all her manipulative streaks, wasn't some criminal mastermind. But the more I read, the less it looked like an accident. 2 store cards, a personal loan inquiry, a flagged online account under a slightly altered version of my name. My middle initial changed, but the same address and date of birth. The kind of detail you only know if you've shared a home with someone. I sat back and stared at the wall for a while, replaying every small, harmless thing she'd done that suddenly made sense. The day she accidentally opened my mail. The time she asked to borrow my passport for an apartment application. The afternoon she spent on my laptop, just checking flight prices. She wasn't planning a trip. She was planning leverage. I called the fraud department. The agent, polite but clearly curious, asked me to forward any relevant messages. I sent everything. The receipts, the screenshots, even her "help me with rent" text. He paused for a moment after reviewing the attachments. Mr. Walker, are you aware that this could qualify as identity theft? My stomach turned. I had a feeling, I said quietly. He told me they'd flagged multiple transactions connected to her IP address. Apparently, she hadn't even been careful. She'd applied for credit lines from our old Wi-Fi connection. That meant digital proof. That evening, I got a call from her mom again. Her voice was shaking. Alex, I didn't know how bad it was. The landlord called me. The rent's 3 weeks late, and she told him you promised to send the money. What's going on? I told her everything. Carefully, calmly, without anger. Her mother went silent for nearly a minute before whispering. She used my information too, didn't she? I didn't have to answer. The silence was enough. By the next morning, things started to unravel for my ex. She must have realized I'd gone quiet not out of fear, but because I was done playing. Mutual friends texted me, saying she was freaking out, that her mom had cut her off financially, and that she'd been called in for questioning about something related to a fraud report. Questioning. That word sat in my chest like a stone. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like inevitability. Because I knew she'd built her life like a house of cards. And all I did was stop holding my breath. 2 days later, she finally called. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity won. Her voice was raw. You told them everything, didn't you? I didn't tell them, I said. I just sent them what you wrote. You've ruined me. No, I replied. You did that when you decided my credit score was your emergency fund. She hung up without another word. That night, my phone buzzed again. This time, from an unknown number, a man's voice, tense and angry. You didn't have to go to her family, dude. She made mistakes, but you're blowing this out of proportion. I almost laughed. Her new boyfriend. The same coworker she cheated with. Out of proportion? I said. She forged my name on a loan. Tell her to Google felony. Click. Line dead. The next week, I was contacted by a financial crimes investigator. He asked for a detailed timeline of my relationship and access to the documents I'd kept. For once, my meticulous nature, the same thing she used to mock me for, paid off. I had everything in a folder: statements, screenshots, dates, even the Wi-Fi login record. He told me they were opening a joint inquiry involving both her and another individual suspected of identity-related fraud. Apparently, she wasn't just using my info. She'd been doing it to others. A few days later, I saw her Instagram vanish. Deleted. Then her LinkedIn. Then her phone number went out of service. Mutual friends said she'd moved back home and was trying to fix things. But one sent me something that almost made me pity her. Almost. A screenshot from her private story. Never trust a man who weaponizes your mistakes. I just stared at it, then turned off my phone. Because the truth is, I didn't weaponize anything. I just refused to protect her lies anymore. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the call from the investigator, and today I received the official letter. Stamped. Signed. Formal. You are listed as the primary complainant in an active financial fraud case involving identity misuse, unauthorized access to personal financial instruments, and attempted credit acquisition under false pretenses. There it was, no longer something whispered between texts and phone calls. It was real. She was being investigated. The strangest part? I didn't feel anger anymore. Just a quiet, heavy calm. I'd already gone through every emotion possible: shock, betrayal, disbelief, bitterness. Now, it was like I'd stepped out of the storm and was watching it rage behind glass. Her mother called again that afternoon. She sounded tired, older somehow. They came to ask questions, she said quietly. About the accounts, the paperwork. She's not denying it anymore. I didn't say anything. There wasn't much left to say. Then she added, almost whispering, she told me she thought you wouldn't do anything because you're too kind. I laughed, not bitterly, just softly. I said, until she turned kindness into currency. Later that night, I checked my inbox. An email from her ex-coworker, the same guy who once tried to defend her over the phone. The subject line, I'm sorry. He wrote that she'd borrowed his card just to order something small, and now his account was flagged too. He said he'd gone to the police himself after learning about my case. It turned out she'd been juggling multiple loans across different people: friends, coworkers, anyone who trusted her enough to hand over their phone for a moment. The fraud investigator had called it a pattern. I forwarded the new email to the detective. No satisfaction, no gloating, just quiet closure. Because by now, I'd realized that revenge doesn't always mean retaliation. Sometimes, it just means letting the truth finish what you started. That night, I took out the last of my belongings from our old apartment storage, things I hadn't touched in months. A few photos, some old books, the hoodie she used to steal. I stared at the box for a long moment. Then I set it outside by the trash bin. It wasn't bitterness. It was peace. Because she'd built her life on pretending, and I'd finally stopped pretending she was still a part of mine. Next week, I'll meet with the investigator again. Final paperwork, official closure. They said she might be facing formal charges soon. I'm not celebrating that. I'm just done. Sometimes, the cleanest revenge isn't dramatic. It's the silence that comes after the storm, when you realize you don't even care to watch it anymore. Final update that it's been 6 months since that letter. 6 months since her name stopped showing up on my phone, in my inbox, or in my thoughts. Until today, I was having lunch near the courthouse when my phone buzzed, an email from the investigator. The subject line simply said, "Case closed." I opened it. The report was short and direct. She had taken a plea deal, restitution, probation, a permanent record. The woman who once laughed at how soft I was when I refused to argue had just been legally declared guilty of fraud and deception. I didn't feel joy. I didn't even feel vindication. Just peace. The kind of quiet that feels earned. After lunch, I took a walk through the park, the same one I used to go to after work when I was still trying to figure out where I went wrong. Back then, I'd sit on the same bench, replaying every fight, every lie, every red flag I ignored. Now I sat there again, not to look back, but to breathe. My life looks different now. After I moved out, I focused on my business, the small startup I'd neglected while trying to fix a relationship that was already dead. It's doing better than ever. And I met someone new. Someone who doesn't demand proof of love, who doesn't turn vulnerability into leverage. She knows everything that happened. She even helped me rewrite my credit dispute letters, a strange kind of poetry in that. A few days ago, my ex's, mother sent me one last message. It just said, "I'm sorry for what she did. I raised her better." I told her it wasn't her fault. Because it wasn't. Some people don't learn through pain, they only inflict it. That night, I went through my old files to clear up space on my laptop. I found the folder labeled Proof. Inside, screenshots, photos, statements, all the evidence I'd gathered to protect myself. For a second, I hovered over delete. Then I did it. Not because I forgave her, but because I no longer needed to remember. The last message she ever sent me, months ago, was, "You destroyed my life." No, she did. I just stopped letting her use mine to build her illusions. Now, when people ask me about the breakup, I tell them the truth. It wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the lies. It was the moment I realized I didn't have to save someone who enjoyed watching me drown. Because walking away isn't weakness. It's the quiet, unspoken kind of revenge that lasts forever.